everyone. It's a Friday, May 28th, 2021, interactive conversation today with the wonderful Craig Hopkins. And before we get started, and even before I introduce Craig would like each of you to think so I'm going to introduce Craig, have him talk for 10 or 15 minutes, and then let's have a conversation, right? And so the question we'd love to hear from all of you is, what are you doing to combat leadership fatigue and burnout just across the organization, if anything? Or what are you doing? What's working, what's not working, or just what's the state of that in each of your organizations? Most of you here today know Craig, but for those of you maybe watching the recording, Craig is the CIO of the city of San Antonio, which is the 7th largest city in the country. Number 7, everybody. Most people are surprised by that. I know I was when I first learned it. He's helped this major city navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. They also had this little thing last winter, some of you read the news, where Texas basically shut off power for 5 days when it was freezing cold. And it turns out, I read an article this morning, Craig, that you guys were like very close to a complete grid shutdown. A complete grid shutdown. Like, there are these things called black starters that are used to restart plants, and most of those went out too. There's like one left or some crazy thing like that. Anyway, and in addition to COVID and the electricity problems, a myriad of many other challenges the cities face. Before this role, Craig spent 20 years in senior roles at USAA, which many of us are big fans of. In addition to being fans of Craig, we're fans of USAA. And Craig helped the organization do a lot of great stuff that we all liked. And USAA, many of you know, serves the military and their extended families. He started his career in the Coast Guard, where he spent 4 years as an NCO in a variety of roles, including small boat captain or coxswain. And there's some pretty intense stories from those 4 years that really shaped Craig. We may not have a chance to get to those today, but that may be a whole other session, Craig, that we do.
We need a beer for that session.
For sure. Serious stuff, like the kind of stuff that most of us don't deal with in our day-to-day job, although to some degree you probably deal with in the city of San Antonio because you're dealing with fire, police, and so on. Anyway, but Craig, tell us about your Battle Buddy program and what you've been doing to combat leadership fatigue there.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So this was just kind of a common topic that's been coming up a lot, and Britany was great of saying, hey, this might be something we want to throw out to folks at the council and see where it goes as well. The simple story that I'll do for the setup is we've all been through the COVID response. We've all had professional responsibilities for the last 15 months. We've all worked from home or had to figure out different ways of working. So it's not to minimize the time or to say what I've gone through is different or worse or better than anybody else, right? That's not what we're trying to do. But what was interesting was when the first folks landed at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio that come off the cruise ships with a thing called COVID, and none of us knew what that was. It was late February, mid to late February. We as a city went into quarantine preparation, basically set up a quarantine center. Something was going on. And so that was when the adrenaline started. And I'm going to use the word adrenaline intentionally here because, suddenly it was something new and it was different and it was important and nobody knew what it was going to become. And, that first person said, oh my God, we're going to introduce something into your environment that we haven't had to prepare for before. We all pulled out our checklists, that we do, and we said we set working. And then the scenario started to build about, well, what if this thing actually becomes, out in the community? And I remember talking to somebody, a counterpart of mine in Seattle, and they were 6 weeks ahead of us at that time, and they were telling us what was going on in their community, and they expected to have 50,000 people infected, in the next 6 weeks. And we were like, oh my God. So the adrenaline was just running, right? And it just seemed every week there was more adrenaline. And I remember middle of March, Friday the 13th in March, where the mayor declared we're shutting down the city. And we had to shut down city services, and we worked 72 hours straight just figuring out how to get all services shut down and employees safe. and the adrenaline, the adrenaline, the adrenaline, the adrenaline. And in San Antonio, we never hit the first big wave like New York City and a lot of other cities did. We rode a very small wave in that first wave, and we felt good. And then came summer, and we got our ass kicked, right? And we rode a huge wave in Texas in the summer, and adrenaline and adrenaline and adrenaline. So I remember it was Easter. I remember Easter Day, and my wife looked at me and she said, "You're not going to work today." And I went, "What?" She's like, "You've been working every single day, 7 days a week, 16 hours a day since that first victim came off the plane in mid-February." And I said, "No, I haven't. It's like the middle of February right now, right?" I had no sense of time, no sense of time. And she's like, "It's Easter. You're taking the day off." And that's living in adrenaline, right? Where you're constantly, and you lose sense of everything that's going on around you. So fast forward through the summer into the fall, everything that's going on. And then our city manager, who is our CEO, we have 13,000 employees, and he and I are talking. It's around Thanksgiving time, and things have settled down. The tempo is still really high, but it's not kind of the same kind of appetite we're doing all day. And he looked at me and he said, "I'm really worried that people aren't going to take time off for the holidays." And I said, "Eric, we're going to make people take time off on the holidays. We're okay right now. We've been doing this a long time. Let's make everybody take time off." He said, "Okay." He said, "But what's going to happen when we come back?" I said, "I have no idea. We're going to go through another wave." Because we hadn't heard the vaccine wasn't available yet either. So we were just thinking next wave, what's it going to be? So we all forced everybody to take vacations over the holidays. It worked out very well. And then I remember me sitting with my team mid-January, and we're all looking at each other. And we're like, "Okay, what do we do next?" And we were paralyzed. I mean, we were just numb, because it's kind of like when you work hard all day and then you sit down, right? If you don't get right back up again, you fall asleep, right? If I sit down in front of the television at 7 o'clock at night, I'm not getting back up again. I'm done, right? That's how we kind of felt in January. We just kind of felt like, I don't know what to do. And suddenly we use this word fatigue, right? Because none of us were still running at a high tempo, but we were just so fatigued. The adrenaline was gone. And we were just doing this high tempo thing. So Eric said, "Well, we need to get back to a normal tempo." And we were like, "It's not going to happen." And so he said, "How do we help each other then?" Because he was looking for a way to say these wonderful words to everybody in the organization to get excited and rile back up. And after 13, 14 months, there were no more words to say to get everybody excited. So I actually said, let me steal something from the military. I learned this at USAA. I learned it in the military before, but the concept of the battle buddy. What it does is it eliminates the chain of command. It eliminates the need for stuff to go up and down and the person at the top to have to be always on, always communicating. It doesn't say they shouldn't do it anymore. It just says, let's create another way for us to help each other instead of just waiting for the boss at the top to make us feel good. So the battle buddy concept's rooted in that, mostly from the Army, but it comes from all the military chains. And the intent of the battle buddy is really a combat issue. It's someone you absolutely trust in combat. That if you go down, that person will risk their life to save yours. And then it's not just you're part of a team, and not that you like each other and you're going to do what's good, that that person will risk their life to save yours. I always thought about your spouse, your marriage is based on the person who knows everything about you, that they could absolutely destroy you, but because they love you, they don't.
Right.
It's the same concept in combat. And so I've had a few battle buddies through my career, not many, right? But I've had some that I knew that if I did something incredibly stupid, that hand would come over my shoulder and they would say, "Craig, you're being really stupid. I need you to come back." And I would absolutely trust that person's perspective. And so what I said to Eric is, let's figure out how we do that in the city across our executive teams. There's leadership development programs, there's all kinds of stuff like that. But the goal of this was to give people an outlet to someone, to build trust with someone that they normally wouldn't work with every day outside their chain of command. Give them the opportunity to have someone who was empathetic to their situation, who they could talk to in confidence, who that when they saw them in a meeting or in an interaction could lean over and go, you know what, Craig, you went too far. I got to pull you back. And we really weren't set up for that. We were in our silos and we were working through our chain of command, but we weren't working across. We did as a team when we needed to, but not as leadership in that sense of really helping each other. So Eric said, well, I need something to build this. And so HR got a hold of it and they turned it into an HR program. Now, if anybody here is an HR, my apology for saying it that way, but they tried to formally turn it into an HR program. And I finally said, no, we're just going to implement something and go. So we put together some notes and we said, there's only 2 rules to this program. One, it's voluntary, but we want you to do it. We want you to be part of it. And there's about 120 executives in our team, and we wanted every one of them to be part of it. And what we needed you to do is, I needed to match up people who had more maturity with less maturity. And I left it that simple because some of us are not very mature regardless of our age. Some of us have certain experiences in professional organizations or not. So it was a rough, somebody more mature with somebody less mature. That was the only requirement. And then each person listed 3 things that they were good at and 3 things they wanted to improve at. Now, Phil introduced me to an early owner of Match.com. So I'd love to say that they taught me how to do the match algorithm, but they never did. But we basically just said, okay, how do we pair up some people just based on that? I want to be better at customer service. Okay, who's good at customer service? Self-declared. Put you guys together. But if you're both mature professionals, that's not going to be good. So we want to have a mix in there as well. And I actually learned, jumping ahead a little bit, but the less mature actually helped the more mature in a lot more ways than I thought they would, right, in that conversation, as you set that up as well. So we created the Battle Buddy program. We put it out there. I introduced it to 100 people. I had 75 people volunteer within the next day. I literally spent the next several days doing matching on an Excel spreadsheet, trying to match up 75 people to who I thought was best. Put it in front of the city manager. He made a couple adjustments. Craig, I really like this person to be with this person because he knew them really well and he thought there was some interaction there to do it. We only did it to a few. He made me take on 2 people that I wasn't planning on taking on, which was kind of interesting to see as well. And then he said, implement it. And it took 2 days. Once HR had it for about 4 weeks, we turned it around in 2 days and we put it out there. And so what happened was, all I did was said, Joe meet Fred, Mary meet Joe, whatever it was, you guys are now battle buddies. And all you have to do is I expect you to meet at least once a week. Phone call, email, Teams check-in, face-to-face, whatever you want to do, doesn't matter. Once a week, talk to each other. And then pick a topic that you guys think you need to work on together. Now, one of my battle buddies and I, we picked 2 topics, one that I want to work on, one that he wants to work on. So we have a little mix and match conversation as we go through there. And so what's this got to do with leadership fatigue? Right? Because the answer is, did we build back adrenaline with everybody? Not really. What we did is we changed their view of the world. That most of these people were reporting and talking to their supervisor up their chain of command every day. Because in a fire and command control environment, you're following your chain of command, you're doing your job constantly. Very little time is spent working across and talking about yourself. It's always talking about the problem you're trying to fix. And so when the adrenaline wore off and we started looking at each other, what we realized was we were spent ourselves professionally. The tempo is still really high. The teams are still doing the work that needs to be done, but I wasn't investing in myself. I wasn't building new relationships. I wasn't sharing what my knowledge was with other folks who were looking for knowledge, and people were asking to be mentored and coached, and there wasn't any time for that anymore. So what's happened now, and many of the folks that I've talked to, is they're re-energized, not through adrenaline, but they feel like now not only are they still working in a high tempo, solving a problem, but they're giving back and they're making new relationships and they're working through this. Before this call, I just had a call with one of my battle buddies who's the head of the budget office and who's only been here at the city a year, although he's got a whole bunch of professional experience. And the first 30 minutes was him going, Craig, I can't believe how this place works. And I'm like, I know, I've only been here 4 years. I can't believe how this place works. And the second half of it was me going, you need to get your head out of your butt and figure out how you're going to lead around here, because complaining about how this place works isn't going to be the way you're going to make any difference. So how do you want this place to work? And how can I support you in your ideas? Because you're new. Let's get them in here, get those ideas. So that kind of interaction is re-energizing to executives in this, and again, because now he and I never talked except to solve a problem. Now, he's going to call me back next week and tell me to get my head out of my you-know-what, because I'm going to do something stupid too. And I trust him. Now, it takes time to build that level of trust where you know someone's not going to destroy you with what you tell them. But I feel in this case, we're building that relationship. So I'm going to work that trust with him as we go forward. Now, I have had a few partnerships that have called me back and said, can I get a new buddy? I expect that, right? Either didn't work out the way I thought, you matched me up, it wasn't the right thing. But I had a couple that said, I don't think I can trust this person. Okay, I'm not going to judge who's right or wrong. We'll rematch, right? I don't want to make that more than what it is. But it is insightful to see who volunteers to be part of a program like this and who says, I don't need it, right? But also who invests in the time into it as well, whether they think that's important or not. So I've almost kind of, in this program, kind of worked out into a different place where I'm now kind of hovering around lots of relationships, just kind of going, how's it going? What are you talking about? What can I help you with? Just kind of pushing. I'm not as good at Phil in this sense, right? But I just want to make sure that they're giving their time to it, because if you don't invest the time, you're not going to get what it back out of it. So I've had a few people say, how do we turn this on for the whole city? And I was like, you can't turn this on for a whole company. I don't know how to do that. I think this is a great kind of executive program. But at a team level, whether you're a squad, in the military, or you're an agile development team, or you work on marketing, I do think it can be applied at a team level. But it needs somebody kind of at the team level to kind of organize it and help it set up. There will be some natural battle buddies that will emerge typically in there, but I think this gives you an opportunity to kind of put a little bit of a structure in place to support that. So that's kind of the story, Phil. I don't really expect it to become a big leadership development program. I talked to HR. They have some other ideas that they would like this to be part of a bigger leadership development that they work together, but I think it needs to be its own kind of organic, sharing. And there's no mandatory at 6 months, everybody get up and switch partners, right? We don't want to do that either. But as people come in and some people get out, we'll do some moving around as we do that as well.
This is great. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's start. First of all, are there any questions for Craig about what he's doing? And then we want to hear what you all are doing.
It's Katrina. I have a lot of questions.
Okay, Katrina and then Vikki. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Vikki. Maybe I'll just ask two. I'm really deeply curious about, as you reflect on this, what surprised you the most? And what are you proudest of?
I think what surprised me is that it didn't naturally happen on its own. When I worked at USAA, I don't know why, maybe just the culture was different. And there was a military influence, so the battle buddy concept maybe lived, but even if that wasn't the case, it just seemed to kind of, on its own, you would develop battle buddies and you would talk that way and you'd have these relationships kind of build. It didn't seem to be happening here in this culture. That was probably surprising to me. And I don't know if that's because of it's a city organization or government organization, or just every organization has a different culture. So I think that was surprising to me. What was the second question?
What are you proudest of?
Oh, what I'm most proud of is that the CEO took a shot on me. That I got to go around HR, not in a divisive way, right? But instead of all the formality, that he just said, let's take a shot. Let's do this. See what happens. And I said, well, it'll only work if you get a battle buddy yourself and I get to pick him. He said, absolutely, pick my battle buddy. And so I picked a new senior executive that I knew they were going to work together anyway. So it was a kind of a no-brainer, but I set that match up myself and he's been actively doing it. I want him to role model it more for people to see, but I know he's doing it. So that's probably what I was most happy about.
That's actually a huge vote of confidence, because typically, like, allowing somebody to circumvent HR, that's a big freaking deal, right?
Yeah.
HR is seen as sort of protective of the institution in a lot of ways, and allowing you to end run that, that's a huge deal. Good on you.
So let me do a little bit that I took away their responsibility to implement it, but many of the executives in HR helped me with some of the thinking and became battle buddies themselves. We're part of the partnership. So yeah.
That's marvelous. Good for you.
Great. Vikki.
So I didn't know what this was about when you explained just how much leaders take on. You made me realize how much I'm taking on. So thank you for that, because I think I'm going to certainly, at least for myself, find a battle buddy without, necessarily spreading it first. But I just realized I am fatigued. Like what do I do with that?
Glad to hear that, Vikki. I have that sense about you. And I know you sent an email recently about how busy you are. You need more support. And we could talk separately, because I know you made a certain decision, which is fine, but it might be worth rethinking that. I don't know.
Yeah. So what Phil's talking about is, like, I love this council. Like, I can't tell you, it's the best gift that I've ever gotten in my life. And I just recently gave up my seat again to somebody in my company, because I just haven't been able to make the meetings, because I'm just really busy. So yeah, I just, the timing of this is perfect. But my question is, it sounds like you sold the program in the same way that you just told us about the battle buddy concept. I'm wondering if you were to reintroduce it, how you would tweak the message, or would you?
I love the battle buddy word, regardless. The concept of someone you trust with your professional career. Whether you have a program or not, I think, Vikki, to your very point, is as professionals, we need to have people like that, and we need to be people like that. If you're in a cutthroat corporate culture and nobody cares about anybody else, you never have a battle buddy. Well, there's a reason I left that last company, right? But there's also a reason I was there for 20 years too, right? And so I think we need to have them ourselves. And I think what I was back to is, if you wanted to call it something else that wasn't as military focused and combat focused and as kind of harsh as that sounds like, which I'm not offended by. I think that's part of what we do in our professional career. It's really just about support and caring and empathy, and can people love each other at work, right? At some point, it doesn't have to be cutthroat all the time. That doesn't mean it can't be hard and you have battles and things you have to go through. But at the end of the day, if you don't care about the people you work with, then go find another job, right? Easier said than done. So I probably wouldn't rebrand it or do it differently, but I do think that, like anything else, it's got a great start, it's got great momentum, and it's going to peter out unless I keep on it, right? Because that's just the nature of a program. But I hope it, at least, even if the program, even programmed loosely, it's not real program, peters out, people have been introduced to a concept, and then they take that into their heart and say, you know what, I need to be somebody's battle buddy in my career.
Yeah. No, I love it. And it's almost like a mini vacation, because you, like, when you're in a situation like you were, you can't go away, you can't escape. You've always got to be strong and be the leader. And I love the concept of just letting your yeah.
Well, and even in combat, and I have never been in combat, so I'm not trying to pretend I was a military person who lived through combat, but there's, there are incredible peaks of adrenaline. It's not nonstop.
Right.
And the
Boredom,
military,
actually,
yeah,
so-
the
yeah.
military is a lot of waiting around and then boom, solving and then coming down and waiting around, right? So I'm not comparing this to combat, right? But the adrenaline, though the high tempo we've been under, has not given us the ability to settle down and then come back. It hasn't been an up and down, it's been a constant. So I do think we are fatigued. And so, I'd love to hear from you guys. What other practices do we do to combat fatigue in our executive ranks? Because when our executives are tired, they make mistakes. They say stupid things. They don't make the right decisions sometimes. They don't listen to their people. I've seen some people treat people poorly, and I know that's not who they are, but they're tired, and that's why they're doing it. And so we have to give them ways to not be fatigued.
Yeah, what are some of the things? Yeah, burnout. Melissa, do you want to jump in here? You put some great
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many similarities in so many areas. So, Craig, you're talking about fatigue. If you look at some of the latest research coming out of the business schools, it's really focused on burnout. It's the same thing, right? So if you're looking for other things to connect this to, that might be a good thread to pull through. And there's a lot that HBR has written around this topic of burnout that can be useful. But ultimately, I love the fact that, Craig, you've pulled together what is basically some combination of a thought partner who can be really honest about things and a sibling who can tell you the cold, hard truth and is, can basically call you on your stuff in the moment and still be the first one to fight for you externally. So in those private moments at home, nobody's going to be harder on you than a brother or a sister. And out in public, nobody's going to be a stronger advocate. And I love the fact that what you've done here is create what's essentially a family for yourself at work that spans across multiple areas. And I think that's what one of the things people have been missing right now is that those quiet moments where you can build that family at work is much easier when we're all present together in the same office, and you can have those moments to start developing those relationships or to nurture those relationships. That's not as easy when we're remote. And I love how intentional you were about doing this all in this moment. And I intend to borrow it in a couple of areas and pass it on to some other folks as well. Because I love the fact that, you've retaught us what it means to be just plain tired and exhausted. And I think everybody who's been a parent can relate to this as well. And it's easy to forget that as a leader at work, you have some of those parenting sort of similarities for your team, especially if you operate in a servant leadership type of framework.
I had a question for you, Craig. I love the design of, however you define this, more mature, less mature, paired. And I'm not surprised to hear that the folks who
Thanks, Jim. Thank you.
I'm not surprised to hear that the folks who are more mature discovered they were getting more out of their connections. I've certainly seen that pattern repeated. Why did you design it that way? Is that the way the military does it?
No, I think just the nature of when I looked at our executive staff, we actually had quite a few new folks in the sense that they have been promoted up from lower levels to the executive staff recently, or had entered the city, and that, so they might have had, like myself, 20 years experience somewhere else, but only had a couple of years experience in a city environment, which is a very different structural environment to manage in. So I kind of saw that. And then I saw a lot of people with, I've been here at the city 30 years, right, at the same time. So just simplistically like that, just to be able to say a new person to the city, a new executive to the city probably needs a person who's been here a while to say, look, make sure you don't fall into certain traps. This is how the place works.
Yeah.
But also someone to say, well, why does it work that way? Right. At the
Yeah.
same time. So.
Cool. Troy, what are you thinking?
I think it's great. I think the challenge is going to be finding someone to trust, right? So I would love to have a battle buddy, but I don't know who in my org I'd pick. And so I think it's a great concept. If I could find someone to trust that would, the other person could trust me.
Oh, it goes both ways.
But I don't know who the other person would be, right? So and it's difficult if it's not a peer, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the tricky part for me.
So Troy, think about this. In this program, it wasn't based on trust. It was just, let's put you together and let's see what happens, right? So to your point, I think many of the relationships will be courteous and professional. They probably won't be the, I'll save you in time of professional war, kind of thing. But I'm hoping that many of them turn into that trusting relationship if they never had that opportunity before, to that point, I think. But I will tell you, at USAA, there was no matching process. So my battle buddies were years of working with people that I trusted, to your point. You just didn't pick somebody and go, that's you. You looked back after a couple of years and went, and that's the person that I trust. That's the person who I've seen demonstrate that these behaviors, and look what I've been doing for them. It was almost it happened organically, and then you realized you had one, kind of thing.
One of the, so I've studied this closely, right? Because this is really key to the council's operating, trust coming together when you bring strangers together. And most members tell us we do a really, really good job on the trust thing. I think you feel that way, Troy. So what I've learned about this is that if you bring people together who are walking in similar shoes, and again, they don't have to be at the same level or whatever, but they're both in the pandemic or whatever. But you have them from different organizations or departments. In the case, I gotta know, Craig, my guess is that you put people not together who are in the same department, right?
My apology, I should have said that, Phil. That was actually an unwritten rule. Nobody in your chain of command. You had to be matched with somebody out of your chain of command.
Yeah, and that's really key. And with the councils, what we do, obviously, we can pull people from different companies that don't compete with each other, and that's really, really helpful. One of the challenges with this program, I would imagine, I want to hear Craig's thoughts, and maybe goes to your question, Troy, is a smaller organization, a software startup or whatever. There's not, there isn't the breadth of, to move across. So everyone, so you've got more of those internal dynamics that affect that, that smaller group, and it might be harder to do. But maybe there's a way to do it there too. I don't know.
But would you also, I wonder too, if it really, I reflect on the nature of trust. Somebody asked me like week one in my job, I've been here almost 3 years, and somebody asked me as a thought experiment, Katrina, do you believe that trust is earned or is it given? And in like a hot second, I was like, it's given. Like how much time do you have to waste that I need to earn your trust before we can work together? And it's not a value judgment, like where you fall on either side of that line, but I think it's important to be aware of what kind of person you are. Are you a person for whom trust is an earned thing, or are you a person who just offers that? And understanding the kind of person you are and like how you view trust, I think, is an important part of the question. Because if you have to, I don't know, for me, I feel like spending a couple years earning somebody's trust, it like slows the whole process down, but I might be deeply naive about that too.
So can I tell you a quick story? So I got my ass kicked on that question one time in an executive council meeting at USAA with all the EC around the table. And somebody asked that question of me and I said, earned. Mm-hmm. And the senior person at the table said, you are wrong, it's given. and chewed my butt out in front of everybody. Do you think I trusted that person ever again?
Absolutely not, because they placed a value judgment on your answer.
Exactly. And so
Right.
what I learned from that was he was actually right, because my nature is to give trust from the beginning.
Same.
I don't
That
start,
is who you are, Craig. You
right,
gave me trust right from the beginning.
right. But because I'm willing to be vulnerable and have you screw me over. I know that. I'm going to start from a point of forgiveness, from a
Yep.
point of positivity, from a point of love, I'm going to start there.
Yeah.
But trust is earned, and it's earned through shared experiences. Because at the end of the day, I can say that all day long, but if we don't have any shared experiences, if we don't have any combat to go through, if we don't have any trials and tribulations to test each other,
Yeah.
that's just a statement.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day,
I 100% agree with that. I think starting with trust is something that you give someone as a gift. You start closer together. And if
Yep.
you feel like it's earned, you start further apart. And again, neither of those things is a value judgment. It is a perspective and understanding about where you're starting and how you're gonna flex and move.
Right.
What I hear you saying, Craig, and Melissa, you seem to be saying this too, is that it's both. It's both given and earned. Like it's good to give it, but it's also like, yes, and I reflect on that. That makes a lot of sense to me. You know, I mean, I will give my trust to someone, and if they violate it, I won't give it to them again. I mean, it depends on the relationship and the situation, of course. I mean, you know, if it's a family person or whatever, and it's a one-time thing or whatever, you know, but if there's a character issue, right? And by the way, I think my position is that we can learn a lot about each other's characters very fast if we pay attention. Like, it doesn't take years, it takes minutes very often and just keep our eyes and ears open, right? And you learn a lot about people. Melissa, you know, you've kind of done a PhD on this, you know. What are your thoughts? I know you said both. How do you think about that dynamic? Yeah.
I think it is both. You do. And I love Katrina's comment that it's also yours to lose, you know, at any point, you know, just like any relationship, it can go up or down. The one thing with trust is, and it's kind of like integrity and, you know, it can be lost in a moment. And I mean, I think Craig's illustration hits that dead on. That trust that was lost in that one meeting is virtually impossible to regain. And there's a French philosopher that basically highlights the fact that it's kind of like building and climbing the steps to a pyramid. It takes one small knock for you to tumble all the way down, and you're starting over from scratch again, from the very, very bottom. And so that's something that I think when we're developing trust and we're thinking about it, that's an important thing to remember. Whether you start at one point or, you know, by offering it, you start up high or you start down low. One misstep and you can end up all the way back down at the bottom.
I have experience, but not very often. So I don't know if you've seen this, Melissa or Troy, or rest of you, that if somebody does like what that executive did to you in that meeting, Craig, that there is a way for them to earn back trust if they own that. Yeah. And ask for forgiveness, right?
Yeah. Well,
which you just don't see very often.
Yeah, and I don't want to overplay that. It's not like I said I don't trust you forever, right, kind of thing. But in the moment, it was like,
sure,
why would I ever want to open myself back up to this again?
Right.
In that sense. But
you're going to be guarded.
Yeah. So, but to the earn, and maybe we need a better word for earn in this sense, right? Because earn doesn't mean you have to do something to achieve it or in that. I really want to come back to that shared experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Troy was kind of going too, is like, who do I pick? Well, it's really not pick, it's who do you have experiences with? And at the end of the day, my battle buddies are people of character. And I hope they see me as a person of character, right? Which means when the shit hit the fan in a corporate setting, I didn't just do what everybody wanted me to do. I did what I thought was right. And people saw that.
Yep.
And then they said, I want to be with you. And I saw that in other people. And one of the stories I always tell people is in a public meeting, I did something, I thought I was doing the right thing. I had no idea I was offending somebody. And as I entered my office, there was an executive sitting at my chair waiting for me. And I'm like, oh no. And they closed the door and very politely said, you know, don't you ever do that to me again. And I went, I don't know what I did. And they said, well, let me explain it to you. And we went through it and I saw it from a totally different perspective. I had no idea what to, and that person earned my trust because they didn't tear me up. They did it in private. They taught me, I got a lesson out of it. It changed the way I thought. And I promised that person that I would be different, and I was. And
That's
so
awesome.
that person's we were battle buddies from that point on.
And I think that gets back to the core. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And that is how you build trust and you build those relationships. But I love that story because it's how you do it. You could have done it and that person could have done it in any number of ways. And I think that's the whole heart of this Battle Buddy program that if you want to call it a program,
Yeah.
but that it's a whole heart of that concept is that, you know, not that you're not dictating what you talk about, you're suggesting that you should be able to have the hard conversations. And what you're really learning about leadership is how to have those hard conversations that you do and how to be psychologically safe when those things happen. Because I think at the core of this is a lot of psychological safety and building that in to your professional life, which is effectively what this whole thing has done.
Well, listen, I had a professor at Harvard Business School who was one of the great authorities on this concept of psychological safety. He's written a lot about it.
Yeah, she was my dissertation chair.
Yeah, it's awesome. Craig Sauerwalt, we haven't heard from you. I don't know if you can do video, but can you do audio?
Well, I could probably, my connection's been, so I could probably put it on for a couple of minutes. My connection's been kind of spotty.
Well, that's because you're out on the ocean, obviously. So
Yeah, it tells you where my head is these days, you know. No, I've been taking this in because we've never been able to get at Tira, we've never been able to get traction for this at either kind of the division level for Elite or cross division. So we've been trying to do it within things like business resource groups to try to boil it down to, you know, an area where there is more natural relationships.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it didn't strike me until this conversation, but it's even struggling there. And it's because of trust. It's because the culture is collaborative, but untrustworthy. Even within the one group where we've gotten a little bit of traction with this, the people opting into it are opting into it because it's visible from a leadership perspective. And, you know, kind of the unofficial feedback that you hear is that, you know, it's a couple of meetings and you're done. People aren't committed to developing the trust because it's an environment where trust isn't generally given. That's, you know, everything is measured, everything is calculated, which in an environment like this, it doesn't matter what we try to do. This isn't going to work because the foundation isn't there. And I don't know why that didn't occur to me until this conversation.
Culture is powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, which is a bummer because we're in the middle of trying to do this now in one of the other BRGs. And now I'm trying to think how to overcome that. And I don't know that I can.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, sometimes the answer is you got to make a move.
So Craig,
Yeah.
maybe one of my thoughts is a powerful way to change culture is to role model it, right?
Totally.
People need to see it, not hear it, right? It's not what you say. It's what you do, what they see from you. So if you were to have a battle buddy and you were to demonstrate things you guys were doing together and share some stories, and not do it in a way, to your point, where you're trying to get a pat on the back and make visibility so you could get the next promotion or somebody sees you, whatever, in some way, then that becomes powerful for people to say, that's what it's supposed to look like. It's not supposed to look like this. It's supposed to look like that.
Yeah, and the first half of the conversation, this has come full circle for me because I used to do that, and now I'm tired. And now I said to Vikki, I may have even said this during one of your very first sessions back when you first rejoined our group, was how tired I am after a year at home, even though I prefer to be at home.
Yes.
This is my preferred work environment, and yet I'm tired.
We've been working remotely for 15 years, and this is not the same as the pre-pandemic remote thing. I am exhausted. I am really tired. And, I don't know about the rest of you, but, I've had a lifelong struggle with depression, and that's been harder this year. And I don't always make good decisions. Like when I'm really tired, I'll watch TV, and that actually makes me more depressed typically, versus reading a book, which kind of gives me, or calling a friend, right? And I don't know, it's just, and when the pandemic first hit, me and our little team here, we did go into overdrive to support members, and it was actually kind of fun in a strange way. Like, we were doing so many new things, new roundtables, new webinars, new ways of connecting, more one-on-one coaching, and the need was high, and it was clear that, wow, none of us knew what the hell we were doing, and we all needed help. And it did deepen the community, from what I can tell. Like, I feel like it's working in some new ways. But holy crap, I'm definitely hitting burnout.
So Phil, I'm going to find the Gartner thing I told you about. They did a burnout. I know a lot of folks are starting to do these burnout webinars, I'm going to butcher this, and my apology, but something like 40% of what we do is the same every day, right? It is our routine, 40 or 50%. And so the reason the fatigue is set in is not just because of the high tempo of what we've done. It's because the 40 to 50% of our routine has evaporated. Everything else, right? The driving to work, the going out on a Friday night, the walking in the park, all those other routine things that were part of our normal behavior are gone. And so we overcommitted to this high tempo adrenaline side, and we lost all the other stuff that helped us balance out. So, the good news on the horizon is the balance stuff's going to come back, right? But does that mean we're going to give up this other stuff? And do we have enough energy to do it? So maybe Melissa has better studies, but what I'm really told is the issue is not in the next 6 months. The next issue is in the next 3 years. That the effect of what we've gone through has a 3 to 5 year effect on us. That we don't even realize what that's going to be yet. And so
that makes sense.
So I think what we're back to is, if we're fatigued now, what can we do to get people back into relationships with people that they trust, where they can share that and talk through it? And if they turn into battle buddies like I'm talking about, that's a bonus. If they just turn into good professional relationships, that's good enough, I think, for what we're trying to do right now.
Yeah. Britany, you came video on there. Did you want to add something? You're muted.
I was just shaking my head. Yes, that all hands on deck. I was actually talking to a fellow event producer recently, and she was asking, how was it for you guys? I was like, well, I was in a lucky position that I wasn't a producer out on my own trying to manage events, right? I had the luck to be, in a community like this and stayed internal. But that's not to say that we didn't experience difficulties in other ways. And to your point, right, it was just all hands on deck, and we were drinking from a fire hose for
the routine.
First month was
blown up. Yeah.
Right, like none of us were sleeping well. We were just constantly at it, and then got to a month out, and we're like, why are we so tired?
Yeah. No, and I will tell you, the team has been a big deal for me in this last year. Like you and Charlie BJ and Maya, the close team, as well as the moderator group, like, you know, it gets me out of bed in the morning, you know, to know I'm working with you. And then the other thing that's helped is, funny enough, it's like there's been more one-on-one coaching, and I love doing those conversations with members, and more members are asking for help than ever before, and that's been a silver lining in terms of
one of those things that gives you energy. That's how
it
you
totally
operate.
does.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was like, yesterday, 2 members reached out on their own for help, and I can't tell you how happy I was. I was thinking, how strange I am. Like, you know, how many people in the world are like, that's their thing. Like, you know, please ask for help. You know? I love that. I feel my mom's presence very strong.
Hey, Vikki, I saw your question about how we handle requests for new buddies as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, let's get into that.
And it's a little, it's a little odd, right? Because everybody's kind of booked up at that point. So right now, I've only had about 5 or 6 people since we implemented the first matching that have come forward. So what I'll do is I'll ask them to wait a little bit, and somebody new comes, I'll see if they're a match. Probably not perfect, but it gives them someone to start with. If they're not a match, I might wait a little longer. I personally took on 4 battle buddies because I didn't want them to wait.
You're going to get burnt out from all the battle buddies.
Well, you know, I'm weird like you, Phil, in the sense that I love the battle buddy interaction, but I'm exhausted afterward and I need to take a nap.
Yes. No, I mean, you know, it requires, you want to listen, you want to be fully present, right? Yeah.
So I was temporary battle buddy, might be the way to put it. I'd step in, get them started, talk to them, build a little relationship, and then I would pass them on to somebody once I had a better match kind of to do that. So as I've thought about it, there kind of needs to be a pool of some people who can kind of do that, who can kind of go in and out of different places, maybe help a group. I don't want this to be counseling, right? But maybe help or pick somebody up who needs it. The one gentleman I just talked to today, I was told by the CEO, I want you to be his battle buddy. He needs specific help. And so I told him when I matched myself up, we have been matched by the CEO and he was okay with it. I wanted to make sure that was above the board, and we've been good ever since. So, yeah.
These are great. I love the comments in here. This is great. Actually, I'm really happy it's a small group here today. It makes us more interactive and fun. But I appreciate, Katrina, what you said with depression. It's easy to say no to everything on your best day, let alone now. And actually, it reminds me that one thing I have done, it's a version of battle buddies, Craig. I have 3 or 4 people who have told me that anytime I'm feeling depressed, I can call them or text them. You know, they're my sort of battle buddy for those moments when I don't want to talk to anyone, and I know I really need to do that, and I'm embarrassed about my, you know, emotional disability in that moment, you know, and that's been great. Actually, several council members, and you know, and of course for them, they get the joy of being the person to be helpful.
Yeah. Well, and we've kind of taken a mental health approach here too, which is incredibly important, but I don't want to dismiss that there's just good old fashioned mentoring and coaching that goes on here too, right?
Sure.
I'm new to an organization and I don't know how to get work done. Well, you probably need to learn how to work through the budget officer and this other person in order to make, okay, those are great battle buddy, you know, I'm not, go figure it out for yourself. I hope you're successful, right? I care about you and I want to make sure you're successful in how our operation works as well.
Yeah. Well, we're close to time here. Troy, what are you thinking here at the end? To unmute.
All right. Say it again.
I was just saying, what are you thinking here? I hadn't heard your voice.
Yeah, no. I mean, I love the whole concept, and the concept of trust is one of those that is always a challenge, especially anytime things get down or otherwise. And it's one of those things that, I tend to go to new organizations a lot. And so I'm kind of in Craig's boat where I like to give trust early if I can. But I'm now hoping to look at Melissa's dissertation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's one of those things where I am asking for help. I do have Charlie's calendar that I need to get to. It's
because you have done like 30 peer coaching calls as a coach, and we wanted you to do more as a host, bringing the question, and you're doing that. So
yeah, no, and I've done a number of RFHs for sure.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I tend to skew on the other side. But no, the other thing is, I think the model that you brought, Phil from Chick, is perfect, because it is people outside. So, I talk to Craig, probably more than I would any internal employee anyway. But there's such a good thing, as Vikki was saying, with the councils, that I feel like I already have battle buddies if I need them.
That's our hope, that you would have that through this as well, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you for coming and kicking us off on this conversation today, and for the work you do. And you're always so giving. We all appreciate that. I think we're members of your fan club here.
Well, Phil, it's all part of the model that you built, man, because this just comes up in our council meetings and people say this is a good thing to share around. And so this is a great way to do it. So thanks for that.
And I just want to say one other thing. It's kind of unrelated, but who knows, maybe it's related. Melissa and I are running a summer program this summer for high school students and college students who want to learn some of the basics of business. We started this last year and it was a big hit. We used several of Warren Buffett's letters to shareholders as our curriculum, and then we built a set of questions and a whole kind of semi-case method process. So if you have any students in your life that you want to encourage, we'd love to have them. Melissa's just done a whole copy edit on our curriculum, which we very quickly created a year ago. So she's brought it up a level.
It's and to be clear, it's more of a reading group than anything else. It makes it really approachable, which I think is a great thing for all of us to remember, is that part of continuing to learn at any age is just making everything a little less intimidating. And I think that's a good connection back to what Craig has laid out here with Battle Buddies, is if somebody's got your back and can give you a little bit of breathing room when you need it, it makes so many things so much less stressful and more possible.
Yeah, it's great.
You're not alone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Craig.
Yep. Thank you,
Super
Phil. Thank you,
helpful.
Britany. Appreciate it.